14 teams, and Nigel Wood's involvement in that, and the fact that Sport England were upset with the concerns about the lack of transparency and independence with the current leadership of the RFL. And they met with the RFL yesterday. On that very same day, Nigel Wood divested himself of his part shareholding in Bradford Bulls, who are one of the leading contenders to go up. And fans smell a rat. They think that the deal's already been done, that Bradford are going to join Super League next year, and they point to the connections of people on the panel to the Bradford Bulls, and there's very little in the way of denials about that. There hasn't been a lot said, really. So what we're actually going to talk a lot about that this hour, because yesterday Rugby League Commercial held a media briefing where they discussed a lot of issues. Firstly, promoting the run home to the semis, to the playoffs, and launch their marketing campaign around that. But then also Rhodri Jones, the managing director of Rugby League Commercial, he answered questions about anything anybody wanted to ask, and one of those things was Salford. I mean, at the end of the first segment, which was, as I said, it was more a kind of spruiking session for the message that they wanted to get out, I did ask the question, well, will there be a 6-team playoff series next year? Because there's a proposal that it may go to 8 if the Super League has 14 teams next year. And the answers the first couple of answers I got didn't address that at all. Then Rhodri said, well, there will be a playoff system next year, but we don't know what that system is going to be. So anyway, it's great to have the show back. I can tell you what games we have coming up this weekend. There's from across 3 competitions. We've got live matches this weekend. It all starts on Friday in the morning. If you're in the UK, it's Melbourne and Canterbury from Amy Park. And then in the evening, we've got Sheffield and Bradford from Olympic Legacy Park on Friday. I'm travelling over to Perpignan on Friday morning, and you'll know why in a second. Then it's Gold Coast and the Warriors on Saturday morning, Parramatta and Sydney Roosters on Saturday morning, and Saturday evening I'll be at Catalans v Castleford from star Gilbert Brutus. And we'll have an hour build-up and maybe try and get a guest on before that game kicks off. Then one game on Sunday, West Tigers and North Queensland from the 8th Wonder, Leichhardt Oval. If you've never listened to Good Morning League fans before, we do try to mark birthdays of people in rugby league. And I can tell you that Steve Lavers, former Balmain player, had him on my footy cards when I was a kid. He's 71 today. Happy birthday to Steve Lavers. Scott Quinnell, nicknamed Far. He played for Wigan and, of course, Wales. And he's 53 today. Happy birthday to Scott Quinnell. Francis Melly, the winger on telly. He is 45 today. New Zealand, Samoa, Exiles, Auckland, St Helens, Salford. When we were very childish back in the day, we used to say he was conceived in a Parisian sewer. France is smelly. But anyway, that's not making fun of a Polynesian name, I hope. Is Melly a Polynesian name? If it is, I apologise. Brett Finch is 44 today. And he's gone and had some rough times in retirement, Brett Finch. Haven't heard from him in a while, but happy birthday to Brett Finch. He's 44 today. Glenn Buttress from Canberra, 40 today. Who else we got here? Oregon Kafusi, Samoa, Parramatta and Cronulla. He is 26 today. Okay, that's it for the opening bit of Good Morning League fans. After the break, the first voice you're going to hear is Rhodri Jones, and you'll hear him in a few breaks. And then at the end, we're going to hear from my good old mate, Tony the Mole Adams. Thanks for joining us on Good Morning League fans. My name's Steve Mascord. Rugby League Commercial has held a media briefing entitled The Final Charge. It was to promote their marketing campaign for the run home to the playoffs over the next month in Super League. The media briefing had two parts. The first part was, as I said, a presentation with Rhodri Jones, who is the Managing Director of Rugby League Commercial, taking centre stage there. And then the second part was to open the floor to questions, and obviously the makeup of Super League in the future seasons and the plight of Salford were prominent there. So let's start off with Rhodri, spruiking, a good Aussie word, spruiking, the successes and the wins of the competition this year.
I guess from my perspective, the majority of this is going to come from Joe, but I guess as a starter for me, you'll have heard me talk about growing audiences, and that was our kind of USP. And our USP in terms of delivering audiences and growing audiences across our metrics. So I just thought very quickly just touch on a couple of those. Some of them you'll have heard before, but just worth reminding everybody really. But yeah, from an attendance perspective, as of round 22, which is the round we've just had, we're 10% up on where we were last year, which is all credit to the Super League clubs and the work that they've been putting into generating crowds, exemplified by the Wigan attendance on Friday night, over 20,000, I think, for the third time this season. And we had three other crowds of around 10,000 as well, just this past round. So we're 10% up on that. We hit 1 million people attendances after 100 games, again, another record. And we've had strong attendances across Rivals Round, Magic Weekend, and also the Challenge Cup final was the second highest attendance since 2017. So from an attendance perspective, we feel like we're in a good place, and I guess that's then shown again in terms of when we look ahead to the grand final. We're 25% up on ticket sales for the grand final at Old Trafford, and that's from a strong base of last year when we had the best crowd since 2017 last year. So we're very hopeful that we'll be pushing that 70,000 mark come the 11th of October. I think it's well publicised. Leeds Rhinos and Hull Cow have done 7,000 tickets for Las Vegas, which is proof that it's a really appealing event that people want to go to. And when we go to the Ashes as well, 2 of the 3 have sold out. We're about 110,000 tickets now, which for those who can't do the maths this early is about 39,000 for that Wembley fixture at the moment. Our target there is 65 to 70,000. With a lot of the marketing activity to start in earnest kind of come September time, particularly down in London. Audience, I think John previously stated that we were up on our average viewing on Sky. That's at about 33% at the moment, which is positive and encouraging. And obviously with the next couple of weeks coming, which Joe will touch on, plus the playoffs and the grand final week, we're confident we'll be in a very good place come the end of the season in terms of our average audience. And then lastly, from my perspective, in terms of those growing audience pillars, the digital and data perspective, we're kind of 75% up on video views and social media engagements. All of that down to the work that's been going on here, the work we did with IMG over the last 2 years to refine what we were doing, become more efficient, deliver things that people actually want to see rather than just volume of content. And then probably a really key bit is around data and data growth. So this year we've generated 100,000 new data entries onto our system, and primarily because of the change in ticketing system, but also the Ashes clearly has contributed significantly to that data number, and also us now selling centrally for the events that previously clubs sold for. And by that, I mean the Challenge Cup semi-finals, the Challenge Cup final, all ticketing now comes through Rugby League Commercial. So we've been able to grow our pool of data and information on our fans. So that's kind of the high level stuff in terms of growing audience.
And their managing director, Rhodri Jones, he told us on rugbyleague.com earlier in the year that all the planning was around 12 teams in Super League for 2026. Well, of course, the clubs have gone another way, and they have indicated and voted for their preference of 14 teams next year. So Rhodri was asked about his reaction to that decision.
Yeah, I think on composition of Super League next year, I mean, ultimately the Super League clubs were always going to make a decision on that. That's not something that we were ever going to be the decision makers on. So they were the clubs were going to make that decision themselves anyway, if that makes sense. And they've duly made a decision to go to 14. So at that point, we were in the room on that Monday afternoon. The clubs voted, and they voted for 14. They voted for 14 next year, and off the back of that, we have to start preparing for a 14-team Super League. So, but ultimately, Matt, the clubs have decided they want 14 in the comp next year. We're assuming it will be 14. It might still only be 12, depending on that 13-14 process, and that's the work that we've now got on in earnest to make sure that we're ready for, in effect, fixtures being ready by the end of November and a calendar for next year based on 14 teams.
Media briefing by Rugby League Commercial, and it was Managing Director Rhodri Jones who did most of the talking. He was asked whether the move to 14 teams next year, which is mandated by the Super League clubs, whether that will make the competition draw more difficult.
I'd like to think it was slightly easier because we don't have to think about loop fixtures. So, that avoidance of 3 fixtures being close together, we avoid that naturally. That said, depending on who comes up, if they are a ground sharing stadium, that adds to the pool of already half the league being dual use, which then means that certain times of the year, as you saw during the process we went through last year, in that kind of June, July period, there'll be weekends where potentially half the league again is still unavailable to host home fixtures. So we won't avoid that challenge and that issue, but what we do avoid is that congestion of 2 fixtures against with the 2 same teams being in the schedule. Probably it's a bit cleaner in that sense.
At that Rugby League Commercial media briefing, the Managing Director of Rugby League Commercial, Rhodri Jones, he was asked about the status of Magic Weekend, which, following the abandonment of loop fixtures under the new proposed draw for Super League, would be abandoned. Here's what Rhodri had to say.
Yeah, so I think there was discussion about Magic in that club's meeting on the Monday, but no decision was made about it. Clearly, with the ambition to go to 14, it removes the loop fixture sequences, and Magic, as we all know, is a loop fixture. I don't think we're in a position to go to 7 clubs or 6 clubs and ask them to give up a home game. So I'd say at this point, Martin, Magic is under review. We are working behind the scenes on provisionally securing a venue on the outcome that we might need it. But at this moment in time, I'd say it's under review, and that's the conversation, the dialogue we've had here internally with the strategic review group, but also with Sky as well. We've said it's under review, which they've accepted. I think attendance this year proves that Newcastle is a good home for it, and it works. I think the challenge for us will be the date in terms of where it sits in the calendar. We're aware of those Newcastle fixtures January through to May, end of May next year. So it's finding the slot, the right slot that avoids clashing with Wembley at the end of May next year and Easter, which is obviously April time, and the other Challenge Cup rounds in between all of that. So that's the bit that we need to work through, and obviously the Catalan are going to Paris early June as well. So yeah, it's just about trying to find the right weekend for us.
Of course, Salford was a big topic of conversation when Rugby League Commercial hosted a media briefing, and the Managing Director of Rugby League Commercial, Rhodri Jones, he was asked how confident he was that the Red Devils would fulfil the rest of their fixtures this season after forfeiting the match against Wakefield.
Well, I think last night was encouraging when they said they'll fulfil Friday against Lee. I think they've got Warrington the week after as well. So look, I think it is a week to week thing, but I'm confident that they and everyone else around the game will look to get them through the next 5 fixtures.
It's been reported all year that the RFL had to ensure Salford fulfilled their fixtures or replace them in the competition, because if they were down a team, they'd be in breach of their contract with broadcaster Sky, who could screw up and throw away the agreement or demand money back. But today I asked the managing director of Rugby League Commercial, Rhodri Jones, whether that was in fact true, whether the game had to provide a certain number of games for Sky or risk being in breach.
I'll be honest, it's never a conversation I've been party to with Sky in the liaisons I've had with Sky throughout the course of the season, talking about Salford. They've been fully aware of the challenges that we faced and Salford have faced, and as you would expect, we speak to them, or I speak to them on a very regular basis to make sure that they're across it and they're not reading things from you guys before they've heard it from me. But we've never had the conversation about, what happens if they go, what would the consequences and what would the, dare I say, punishments be. So yeah, I think it's probably people assuming of an outcome rather than actual reality.
Graeme, my name is Steve Mascord. This is Midweek Scoops. How you going, Tony?
Yeah, doing well, Steve. A week closer to the finals and a week closer to getting out of Sydney winter, although it's absolutely pissing down here. We're setting all sorts of records for rain in Sydney in August. So that might make our English friends feel a bit better about the weather.
Yeah, now, but before we go on to that, is it the new fella who has switched to England? Is it Billy Smith who switched to England? Is that right?
Yes.
Right. What do you think?
He's a very good player. I think Herbie Farnworth is probably the best centre in the rugby league world. You put Billy Smith on the other side in the centres, they've got two pretty good players. He's had a wretched run with injury over the years, Billy Smith, but this year, touch wood, he's been playing for the Roosters. He's been scoring tries, setting up tries. He's a good player.
Now, you see what I did there? The Roosters and Smith. And your lead item in your column is about another Smith, the most sought-after playmaker in the comp, but also not in first grade at the moment.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. He can't get into the Roosters' top grade side. Their halves are Sam Walker and Hugo Savala. And with Daly Cherry Evans coming to the Roosters next year, even though no one's willing to admit it, he's the odd man out. He's under contract for next year, but the Roosters will give him permission to move on, I've been told. And there's 5 clubs talking to him, even though he's not a first grader. And I can even name the clubs if I can find them here. Canberra, the Cowboys, the Dragons, Souths and Newcastle have all shown interest. There's a lot of clubs looking for a class playmaker. Sandon Smith, you'll recall earlier in the season, in one of the biggest games of the year, the Anzac game, the traditional Roosters-Dragons game, he romped in with a medal for the player of the match. It's been downhill for him since then with Sam Walker coming back, but he's a quality player, good kicking game, and with these 5 clubs in the hunt for him, he won't be playing reserve grade much longer.
Tell us about the Raiders youngster who hasn't been able to get a look in because of KO weeks and who might be on the move.
Yeah, that's right. Chevy Stewart. He's a good young player. Played 3 games last year when Weeks was out, and 20-year-old, very quick. The word is he's going to the Dragons. They're going to move Clint Gutherson, who's had an excellent first year at the Dragons, but probably lacking that little bit of pace, and will be a year longer. He'll be 31 next year. So the word is they're going to move him to lock, and this boom 20-year-old Chevy Stewart to fullback. Good move by the Dragons, if it comes off, which it looks like it will.
Now, I know my old mate John Davidson at rugbyleaguehub.com long reads gets the odd yarn off LinkedIn from time to time, and you have also flummed a yarn off LinkedIn. Tell us about it.
Well, I was looking at LinkedIn because you never know which game's going to be your last in this game, do you, Steve, as a player or a journo? I didn't find a job for myself, but I found an interesting one that the Newcastle Knights put up for a catching and kicking coach. And this sort of ties in with what we said in our earlier show about Xavier Coates and what a weapon he is with the high kicks these days, because the twist in the rules that those going for the bomb can't be touched or even tackled or jostled mid-air. We're seeing more tries from bombs than ever, and the Knights, have obviously realised this. They have a problem scoring points at the best of times. They've gone, I think, 9 or 10 first halves this year without scoring a point. They've obviously realised this, so they're looking at doing it with a catching, kicking coach. And they've advertised for it on LinkedIn. So I might even apply. You never know.
Yeah. Okay, one more item, Tony. And once more, we're introducing our viewers and listeners to a player they may not have heard of before, Compton Purcell. Who is Compton Purcell? Good name.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they haven't heard of this one, but he's a youngster, a young centre from New Zealand. He started the year actually playing for the Wars in the Jersey Flag, then came across to the Panthers. After a handful of games, they're so impressed with him, they've signed him to a long-term deal. So another one for the Little Black Book, which is getting quite crowded, that Little Black Book, Compton Purcell.
Okay, everybody, thanks for watching and listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next week, Tone.
Sounds good, Steve.